have 400 examples of best practices. 400 is enough for the moment. Otherwise, it would be too big a report.
Destacar algunas tendencias que se han identificado en los.
And now a few things that have been identified in the data. We have carried out a compilation here. We have taken data from 2012, 17 and 22 every 5 years. And finally, from countries that have incorporated more recent data up to 2024. There have been a decrease in the number of public libraries in the last few years. It's not a significant one, but there has been a decrease and not an increase. The number of professionals is stable, which is not bad news. And according to the number of visits in the last couple of years, 23-24, there has been an important number of an increase in number of the results comparing to the pandemic. At a European level, however, we don't have good data for comparisons. We lack coordinated data, and this is a drawback when developing a planning that is actually efficient. This is something that is mentioned quite frequently in this type of conferences, how relevant it is to compile data. And this is something that we are more or less aware of, and we're working on it, and we have even specific regulations, etc. However, we see that this is not enough, because at a European level we are not fully coordinated. If we move to the prospective part of the report, there is a part of identification of social challenges and another one for identification of the elements related to the network of libraries. These are the most common ones: access to culture, literacy in society, social cohesion, democracy, sustainability, digital divide, health, rural development, and adaptation to crises and disasters. For all these challenges, we have identified the roles that could be relevant and what examples of best practices can be taken in each case when it comes to implementing them in the public libraries. Having identified the challenges, we have worked on the multiple roles of the public libraries. We're not discovering anything new here. Actually, the services that are provided in the libraries are many. But we have tried to systematize them, and we have tried to identify the main roles, namely 4 in this case, which gather all the elements provided by the public libraries that are being done or that could be done. This is very useful when it comes to developing new lines of action, strategies, lines of funding for each of these roles. As I said earlier, we will focus mainly on 4 roles. The first one being marketplace. This term has been used in English in the report because a literal translation from the English marketplace would not be adequate to transmit the idea behind it, which is an agora or a public square that is open to the community and where we exchange ideas, cultural practices, knowledge, initiatives, conversations, etc., reading, etc. So an open room for exchange, and in this role, public libraries provide information services and they foster all the democratic values that are relevant. And they're also useful to protect freedom of speech. All the sectors of society, all citizens may gather there, and we can develop initiatives in all kinds of conditions. As the Secretary of State says, where we build critical thinking. And this may enable the acceptance of literacy, cultural access, social cohesion, the strengthening of democracy, or stimulation of economic growth. The second role is the laboratory. This laboratory is going to be a space which is open for expression, and both individual people and collective groups may develop new ideas, capacities, and projects. In this particular case, these libraries should be having good equipment, adequate technical equipment, and they should also develop training programs that are adequate to develop all the different activities that are connected to the lab. The libraries, therefore, will enable the users to acquire competences and to discover new ones that would allow them to face challenges such as the informational literacy, access to culture, the reduction of the digital divide, etc. The third role is to become a sanctuary. That means a safe space, a refuge, a shelter, a place where we can be safe and we can achieve protection of those entering this space. So it is the ability to shelter underprivileged groups. It is open to any citizen that wants to interact with the environment, with the information, and especially if they want to do it openly and freely. The idea of sanctuary, it is increasingly more present. It is a kind of a refuge for people that may be threatened. And it, of course, could also be something that protects us from adverse climate conditions. They are climate refuges, especially in times of crisis. So, by becoming a sanctuary, they face and attack challenges such as the construction of resilience, etc. And the last role is to become a hub. It has been left in English as well. It is not easy to translate hub. Node would be maybe the translation into Spanish of hub. So it is a central space that connects different individual and collective goals in all the communities that are part of the environment of the library. So it becomes a central hub. And in this hub, we may find public institutions, public educational institutions, cultural associations, neighborhood associations, NGOs, etc. So in this particular case, they provide the tools and the consulting capacity to contribute to the local development, both in urban environments, in the districts, and in the rural areas as well. In this fashion, libraries open their walls and take the services to all the population by establishing alliances with all these bodies and fostering cultural participation of all the citizens. So once again, citizenship and participation are essential elements in this case. Having identified the roles, in this particular case, we have identified the roles of the librarians. We don't devote a lot of space to that in the documents, and I won't delve into detail because you're more or less familiar with it. So this is for some other cases in which people are not aware of it, but you are aware of it. So it is a way to acknowledge the role of librarians in libraries, and it is also a call for protection offered to professionals when developing their work. These roles, here you have them, the storyteller, guide, facilitator, protector, catalyzer, motivator, and connector. For the report, just as it happened earlier, we try to find roles of each, examples of each role rather, and we intend to help confront the social challenges that are present here. Once this prospective phase has been ended, the report calls for an urgent action by means of a series of recommendations and provides a series of final conclusions as well. To guarantee the feasibility and the impact of libraries as universally accessible institutions that enable us to face the challenges that we have to confront in the European Union and in Europe at large, we identify as necessary once a series of elements. First of all, a legal and strategic framework which is robust and which acknowledges libraries as essential pillars for democracy that guarantee access to information, education, culture, and citizenship. In the report, we have seen that the library systems that work better in the European Union are the ones of those countries that have developed integrated focuses and approaches that combine strategy, funding, etc. The second pillar is a systematic funding that becomes enough, and the report highlights that this has to be carried out at all levels: national, international, European Union, etc. Through the different programs of the European Union, we can have a mandate to improve accessibility to the funds and to create specific lines of funding for libraries. In this fashion, we can guarantee the sustainability of the system. The third pillar would be decision-making processes that are based on data. And again, back to data, it is very important to have good data that enable libraries to respond to challenges in an adequate fashion. It is not only necessary to collect best practices, but we need those data to be able to be used to make decisions, not just to fill in presentations and to have them stored forever. So the fourth pillar would be to have highly qualified staff that is adequately paid. So this is something that we all have clearly in mind, right? Okay. A fifth pillar is the sustainable public spaces. They have to be flexible, they have to be adapted to the needs, they have to be environmentally sustainable and universally accessible. Although in the report there's no specific aspect related to sustainability, etc., the whole report makes reference to the relevance of these two aspects. If libraries in the future are not sustainable, they won't be libraries. And finally, the sixth pillar is the digital maturity. We have to foster technological resilience, and the need to experiment with new technologies to foster inclusive participation in digital society, to confront challenges, to integrate with responsibility technologies such as AI, which is something that we will definitely touch upon these days. And finally, after all these conclusions, they establish a series of recommendations at all levels. First of all, in every single level, in the administration, in the political and social aspects, we have to acknowledge libraries as essential services, and therefore we have to strengthen and integrate their multiple roles in the different political strategies and institutional strategies that we may have. At a European level, we also have to guarantee free access to libraries. We don't have much time, but in the discussion of the group, this led to a serious discussion, because in English we mention free access, and free may be found as with no money whatsoever, and not everybody was so positive about that being free. Developing a harmonized system for data collection, improving access, prioritizing these for the following or forthcoming plans. At a national and regional level, the main goal would be to develop a legal framework that acknowledges and sustains the role of libraries, guarantees the funding, the collection of data, the training of professionals, and the improvement of infrastructures and accessibility. And at a local level, implementing a strategy that acknowledges and fosters the role of libraries in the cultural, social, and local fabric, with an adequate funding and with the, of course, support of the national and the regional authorities to be able to develop libraries further. Finally, for the staff of the libraries, two recommendations. One is to make visible the impact of the positive impact of libraries, public libraries in society, and to provide further data that would be useful for those who make decisions, because they will be able to clearly state what the relevance is of public libraries in this context. There's also a recommendation to establish cooperation and exchange networks that would strengthen the libraries and librarians. And finally, so that we see what this group and this report has to do in the future, we are actually working in the final draft. Hopefully we will have it this very month, and it will be sent to the Commission. The last draft was sent in October, where the final remarks were included, and we are about to send this for publication. The publication will be carried out at the beginning of 2026, hopefully. January, February, maybe March, first few months in 2026. And there will be a final conference in spring 2026, having already published the report, to see what the dissemination strategy would be for the implementation of measures, etc. And finally, what remains to be done is to disseminate and promote this report and all the measures that are included in it, review and take note of all best practices included, and to demand that our persons in charge should take this into consideration for the strategies and for the development in the future. This report intends to be a tool to ask for the review of these measures and to implement them, and hopefully will be fruitful, because we have examples of other OMCs. For instance, the mandate for status and labor conditions of artists, and this has been quite useful. So hopefully this will also be useful, and in the future we expect this report to be applicable to many different situations and to be positively received by the community. Thank you very much. Rafael Heredia, thank you very much, and all the best to you. And we have a 30-minute break for coffee to interact with our colleagues and be back here in half an hour. Thank you.